Hi boys and girls, thanks for tuning in to part 5 of Fudge-a-Mani by Judy Blume. I apologize if I'm a little bit sweaty. I just finished an at-home workout. I hope you guys are making sure to be physically active during this quarantine. My workout consisted of some jumping jacks, some squats and lunges, and just running in place, even just running in place. So I hope you guys are trying to stay active. But yes, sorry if I'm a little sweaty right now. So far in the book, we've read chapters 1 through 9. We are introduced to the Hatcher family, the Tubman family. We're introduced to Mouse Ellis, who is Sheila Tubman's best friend, who is going to be joining them on their summer vacation, and Jimmy Fargo, who is Pete's best friend and will be joining them during their summer vacation as well. We meet the summer vacation house neighbor, Mrs. A, and her granddaughter, Mitzi, who is the same age as Fudge. And then, so far in chapter 9, we meet Izzy, who is the library assistant. It seems like she's going to be playing kind of a big role maybe in the book, since Peter is falling in love with her and whatnot. Also, Mrs. A's husband and Mitzi's grandfather is Big Apple, who is a retired Major League Baseball player, and Pete seems to be a really large fan of him. We haven't quite met him yet, but seems like we're going to meet him soon. All right, so chapter 10, Green Gurgling Gas. On Wednesday, Sheila got a phone call during breakfast. As soon as she hung up, she started bawling. "What's wrong, honey?" Fudge asked. "My friend Mouse Ellis has chicken pox and can't come to Maine." Grandma put her arms around Sheila. "You must be terribly disappointed." "I am," Sheila wailed. "Everything happens to me. Why does it have to be my friend who gets sick? Why couldn't Jimmy Fargo get chicken pox instead?" "Jimmy had chicken pox in 2nd grade, I said. "Don't you remember? We all had them." That made Sheila cry even harder. "But it's so unfair." "Where is it written that life is fair?" Grandma asked. "It's all ups and downs, isn't it, Buzzy?" Buzzy Sr. nodded. "These things happen," he told Sheila. That's when I burped. I didn't mean to. It just came out. Probably I drank my orange juice too fast, but Sheila glared at me. "I heard that, Peter." "Heard what?" I asked. "That stupid laugh," Sheila said. "That was no laugh. That was a burp." Sheila turned to Buzzy Sr. "Grandpa, make him stop. He's so mean. He's glad Mouse can't come to Maine." Before I had the chance to explain, Tootsie flicked a spoonful of oatmeal across the table. It landed on Sheila's face, halfway between her mouth and her eyes. "You see," Sheila cried. "You see how everything happens to me?" "It's just oatmeal," Grandma said, handing Sheila a piece of paper towel. "That's not the point." Sheila turned and ran away from the room. I sure hoped things would improve before tonight when Jimmy Fargo gets here. After breakfast, Mom helped get my room ready for Jimmy. We moved Fudge's things down the hall into the room Grandma is sharing with Tootsie. She set up a rollaway bed for Fudge right next to Tootsie's crib. "I hate crowding you in like this," Mom said to Grandma. "I don't mind," Grandma said. "Sleeping in the same room as my grandchildren is a privilege. It's a lot more fun than sleeping in a room by myself." "You should get married, Grandma," Fudge said. "Then you wouldn't have to sleep in a room by yourself." He jumped on the rollaway bed. "That bed isn't designed for jumping," Mom told him. "It's going to collapse if you don't stop." Fudge tumbled off the bed like some Olympic gymnast and landed on his feet. "If I tried that, I'd probably break a leg." "Do you still snore, Grandma?" he asked. "Fudgy," Mom said. "That's not a polite question." But Grandma didn't mind. She said, "I really don't know, Fudge. You'll have to tell me." "Snoring keeps the monsters away," he said. "Yes," Grandma said. "I'm sure it does." "When I get married, I won't have monsters in my room," Fudge said. "Says who?" I asked. You don't get monsters when you sleep in a bed with somebody else. That's why you want to get married, I said, so you won't get monsters in your room? Why else would I get married? You should talk to Mitzi, I told him. She's got monster spray. Monster spray? Mitzi's monster spray, I said in a deep voice, trying out my commercial. Made from a grandmother's secret formula. Spray twice a day and melt your monsters away. Really, Peter, Mom said, but Fudge liked the idea. He jumped back onto the rollaway bed and bounced up and down singing, Monster spray melts your monsters away. Fudgy, Mom warned, but it was too late. Both ends of the rollaway bed sprang up, catching Fudge in the middle. I imagined the headline in tonight's paper. 5-year-old boy flattened by rollaway bed. Get me out of here, Fudge yelled. Okay, Mom and Grandma held the bed apart and I pulled him out. Stupid bed, Fudge cried, kicking it. If you do that to me again, I'm going to chop you up in little pieces. Let's not blame the bed, Mom said. Later, we were out in the backyard. Fudge told Buzzy Sr. what had happened. Those beds can be very tricky, Buzzy Sr. said. Fudge nodded. Then, out of nowhere, he said, Do you snore, Buzzy? I used to snore, Buzzy Sr. said, as if Fudge's question were perfectly natural. But since I sleep alone now, I really don't know. How come you sleep alone? Because my wife died. Fudge got this serious look on his face. You could tell he was thinking hard. But after a minute, his face lit up and said, You should sleep with Grandma. Fudge, Mom said. Well, they're best friends, Fudge told her, like Pete and Jimmy. And Jimmy's going to sleep in Pete's room, right? Buzzy Sr. and Grandma looked at each other and laughed. That afternoon, the sky turned gray and it started to drizzle. The Tubmans decided to drive to Bar Harbor. That's the town where all the tourists go. It's got hundreds of little shops selling t-shirts with sayings about Maine like, cool as a moose in Bar Harbor, or Maine 50 miles from nowhere. Count me out, Libby said. I've got to be at work by 3. Count me out too, Sheila said. The Hatchers depend on me to babysit Fudge. But Mom convinced Sheila she deserved an afternoon off. If you ask me, everyone was feeling sorry for the Cootie Queen just because Mouse got sick and couldn't come to Maine. Everyone but me, that is. Still, I felt relieved when the Tubmans left. I hope they go out for a pizza and catch a late movie. I thought. I hope they like the action in Bar Harbor so much that they decide to stay for a week. They still weren't back when Mr. Fargo called from town, asking Mom for directions to the house. That was a good sign because by then it was after 6. I waited on the porch. When I saw Mr. Fargo's truck, I ran down to the road. His truck is really old with rust spots around the fenders. It's painted the color of bile. Not that I've ever seen bile, but last year in school we learned about the digestive system, and that's the way I imagined it, a sick greenish-brown color. Turtle barked. It's Jimmy, I told him as I waved Mr. Fargo into our driveway. At first, Jimmy couldn't get out of the truck. The door on his side wouldn't budge. He kicked it a couple of times, then banged it with his shoulder. Finally, it creaked open. By then, we were laughing. Turtle jumped up and tried to lick Jimmy's face. Good boy, nice doggy, Jimmy said, patting him. Turtle knows a friend when he sees one, I said. Jimmy gave me a bear hug and we slapped hands. It was great to see him, but that didn't stop me from checking over my shoulder. I hoped the Tubmans wouldn't show up now. Jimmy also took a look around. You were right, he said. You can't even see Sheila's house from here. I guess it's through those woods over there. We'll see, I began. But then Mom opened the front door and called to us. Inside, Dad had a fire going in the big stone fireplace. Fudge was stretched out on the floor with his Crayolas, illustrating chapter 1 of his book. Tootsie was scooting around on her toddler bike, and Grandma was reading. She put down her book to greet Mr. Fargo. Jimmy headed straight for Uncle Feather's cage. "Bonjour, stupid," he said. "Bonjour, stupid," Uncle Feather answered. Jimmy laughed. "Good old Uncle Feather." "Good old Uncle Feather." "Please, Jimmy," Mom said, "don't encourage him. Once you get him going, it's hard to turn him off." "Turn him off, turn him off." "You see what I mean?" Mom asked. "See what I mean? See what I mean?" I motioned for Jimmy to sneak away from Uncle Feather's cage. Jimmy got down on all fours and crawled across the living room, out of Uncle Feather's sight. As he did, Tootsie held her arms out to Mr. Fargo. "Up," she said, "up." Mr. Fargo lifted her high above his head and shook her. Tootsie loved it. She has this thing for bearded men. She'll raise her arms up and say "up" to any guy with a beard. Mom says it's because Dad used to have one, but I'm not so sure. We're going to have to teach her to be more careful. I can just see her walking down Broadway in a few years, holding out her arms to every bearded weirdo on the street. Mom took Tootsie from Mr. Fargo. "Thanks for driving Jimmy all this way, Frank," she said. "I know what a long trip it is." "Used to come up here in the old days," Mr. Fargo said, "with my ex-wife. You remember my ex-wife, don't you?" Uh-oh, I thought. I hope he's not going to start in on Mrs. Fargo because Jimmy really hates when he does. "How about something to drink, Frank?" Dad asked. I was glad he changed the subject. "Some fizzy water if you have it," Mr. Fargo said. "Coming right up." Mom smiled, but I could tell she was tense. A lot of people get tense around Mr. Fargo. I think it's because he never smiles, even when he's trying to be friendly. "How about this Maine weather?" Mom asked. "You have to have weather, whether or not," Mr. Fargo said. Jimmy groaned. "That's so bad, Dad." I heard a car pull into the driveway. Oh no, I thought, not now. The car doors slammed, and a minute later, the Tubmans came bounding up the porch steps and into the house. Sheila headed straight for the fire. "It's so cold and damp," she began. She stopped when she saw Jimmy. "Oh, it's you." "What's she doing here?" Jimmy asked. "I'll explain later," I whispered. But Sheila explained for me. "I happen to live here. This happens to be my house." "I thought this was your house," Jimmy said to me. "Well, see," I began. "We share the living room and the kitchen," Sheila said. "We eat breakfast and dinner together every day." Jimmy looked at me. "I don't get it." "It's like two houses in one," I told him. "It's like they're connected." "Connected?" Jimmy said. "Yeah. Joined together," I said. I looked over at Sheila. She was enjoying this. "Joined together?" Jimmy said. Sheila laughed out loud. I glared at her. "See, your family lives out there," I explained. "See, our family lives over there," I explained, pointing to our side of the house. "And her family lives over here. And the living room and the kitchen are sort of in the middle." Jimmy just stood there with his mouth half open. Sheila picked Jake up and started kissing her. "Isn't my dog adorable?" she asked Jimmy between smooches. "I thought you were afraid of dogs," Jimmy said. "She is," I told him. "That's not true," Sheila said. "I just don't like big, smelly dogs." Turtle, who was asleep in the corner, raised his head. "Attack!" I told him mentally. But he didn't get my message. He just scratched himself and went back to sleep. Sheila carried Jake over to Jimmy and put her in his arms. "Rub her belly, she loves that." Jimmy held Jake like a baby. "She's so soft." This was too much. I was glad when Dad called dinner's almost ready. Pasta with Anne's special sauce. Mr. Fargo suddenly came to life and said, "Better get our things inside, Jimmy." When Jimmy and his father went out to the car, Mom said, "Did he say our things?" "He meant Jimmy's things," I told her. "I hope so," Mom said, looking worried. But then But then Jimmy carried one duffel bag into the house, and Mr. Fargo carried another. I don't have much, Mr. Fargo said. Just this and my art supplies. Oh, you're planning to stay with us? Mom asked. No point in trying to camp out in this weather, Mr. Fargo told her. From the look on Mom's face, I thought she might faint. There was a long, awkward silence. Finally, Dad said, You can have the sofa in here, Frank. It's the only available space left. Unless Grandma sleeps with Buzzy Sr., Fudge said. Then I can sleep in Grandma's bed and Mr. Fargo can have the rollaway. Everyone looked at Fudge, including Mr. Fargo. Don't go to any trouble, he said. This sofa looks mighty good to me. Later, when Jimmy and I were in the bathroom getting ready for bed, he said, I'm really embarrassed about my father. Anybody can see you've already got too many people in this house. It's no big deal. I handed him a clean towel. Yeah, right. That's how come your mother almost fainted. Only because we're out of beds, I said. You think my father cares about beds? He likes to sleep on the floor. It's okay, forget it. Jimmy spit out toothpaste. You know he's weird. He doesn't mean to be, but he is. He's not that weird. I flushed the toilet, which reminded me of my poison gas story. Look, I said, I'm embarrassed too. I should have told you about sharing a house with the Tubmans, but I didn't find out until we got up here, and then, well, I was afraid if I told you wouldn't come. I probably wouldn't have, Jimmy said, but now that I'm here, it doesn't seem that bad. I was glad I wouldn't have to lie to Jimmy after all, and telling him the truth wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Still, I couldn't help wondering how he would have reacted to my story. I decided to find out. As soon as we were in bed, I said, Did you hear about the poison gas? What poison gas? The poison gas in the toilets? What toilets? Some guy up here? He had poison gas in all his toilets. What do you mean poison gas? Jimmy faced me and propped himself up on his elbow. It was this green, steamy, gurgling stuff that bubbled up every time he flushed. Green, steamy, gurgling stuff? Jimmy started to laugh. It's not funny, I said. It's an environmental disaster. An environmental disaster, Jimmy said. Where'd you read that? In the National Enquirer? You don't think it's possible? Yeah, I think it's possible if the guy ate something that didn't agree with him. Jimmy broke up laughing. Ha ha, I said as I reached over and turned out the light. Ha ha, a voice repeated, and it wasn't Jimmy. I jumped out of bed and opened the door. Fudge was sitting on the floor right outside my room. What are you doing? I asked. I don't know. Didn't anybody ever tell you you're not supposed to listen to private conversations? No. I picked him up and turned him upside down. I held him that way until his face turned purple. Put me down, Pete! Not until you promise never to do that again. Okay, I promise. I didn't believe him for a second, but I put him down anyway. Now go to bed. I can't. Why not? I'm afraid of the rollaway. The rollaway can't hurt you. Yes, it can. It can mash me, so I'll sleep in here with you and Jimmy. No, you won't. I carried him down the hall and dropped him on the rollaway bed. Grandma and Tootsie were already asleep. Fudge listened to Grandma, who was snoring softly. No monsters tonight, he whispered, pointing in her direction. Right, I whispered back. Now go to sleep. Tuck me in, he said. I tucked him in. Now kiss me goodnight. I was about to drop a light one on his forehead when he reached up, grabbed me around the neck, and pulled me down. Then he planted a big, wet smackaroo right in the middle of my face. Sweet dreams, Pete. Chapter 11, the ISAF Club, or ISAF Club? Fudge was counting his Cheerios when Jimmy and I came down to breakfast the next day. As soon as we sat down, Sheila waltzed in, wearing her fuzzy pink robe and her bunny slippers. As usual. Jimmy took one look and doubled over. Sheila poured herself a glass of juice, then made herself comfortable at the table between Buzzy Sr. and Fudge. Good morning, sweetheart, Buzzy Sr. said, kissing her cheek. Good morning, honey, Fudge said, kissing her other cheek. What is this? Camp Kissy Face? Jimmy asked. You wish, Sheila said. Oh, yeah, I really wish, Jimmy said. Sheila's my babysitter, Fudge told Jimmy, but maybe she's going to be my wife, too. Wife? Jimmy said to Sheila. Maybe, Sheila said. Nothing's definite yet. It all depends on Mitzi, Fudge said. Mitzi? Jimmy asked. She's my friend. She has monster spray. She's trying to get some for me. Then I won't have to get married. Jimmy gave me a look, then sliced a banana into his cornflakes. Buzzy Sr. and Grandma are best friends, Fudge continued, but they don't sleep in the same room. Why don't you save the morning report till after breakfast? I said. I can't. He nibbled on his Cheerios, eating one little circle at a time. I might forget. Pass the milk, please, Jimmy said. Grandma passed it to him, and Jimmy poured some over his cereal. Jake will roll over if you give her cheddar cheese, Fudge said, still going strong. But if you give Tootsie cheese, she spits it out. Okay, I said. That's it. Jimmy doesn't want to hear any more. Sorry. Okay, I said. That's it. Jimmy doesn't want to hear any more. Jimmy wants to have his breakfast in peace. Wait, Fudge shouted. I'm not finished. Oh, yes you are, I told him. But he didn't listen. Does he ever listen? Libby works at Ickles Ice Cream Parlor, he blabbed. She's put extra sprinkles on my cone. And he stretched out the word, making sure he had everyone's attention. Pete got dizzy from Izzy at the library. That did it. I reached across the table and grabbed him by his sweatshirt. One more word, and I'm going to let you have it. Okay. He went back to counting his Cheerios. What was that about, Pete? Peter getting dizzy, Sheila asked. That was a joke, I told her. He felt like he was floating, Fudge said. I shoved back my chair and raced around the table, ready to destroy him. Grandma! Fudge cried. Help! Grandma shouted, Enough! Yee! Tootsie shrieked. Ee! 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 This time, Grandma stood up and banged a wooden spoon against a pot. We all quieted down and ate our breakfast. Not that I was hungry anymore. When we finished, we helped Grandma clean up. Then Sheila danced across the living room in her bunny slippers singing, He got dizzy from Izzy at the library. Mr. Fargo, who'd been sleeping on the couch, suddenly sat up. He looked confused. Where am I? He asked. You're in Maine, Dad, Jimmy told him. Remember? You're sleeping on the sofa in the Hatchers' living room? You mean the Tubmans' living room, Sheila said, as she danced out the door onto the porch. Jimmy followed her, and I followed Jimmy. No way was I going to leave the two of them alone. It was a warm, sunny morning for a change. Everything smelled fresh and clean from last night's rain. Too bad Sheila had to spoil it with her musical act. She danced from one end of the porch to the other, singing, Dizzy from Mizzy, la-dee-da, maybe it's love, la-dee-da. It has nothing to do with love, I told Jimmy. Fudge made the whole thing up. Dizzy, Sheila said, floating, sounds like love to me. Yeah, Peter, Jimmy said, sounds like love to me too. I've seen Izzy, Sheila told Jimmy. She's got curly hair and a fat behind. It's not fat, I shouted. If it's not fat, how come it wiggles when she walks? Sheila asked, parading across the porch. She tried to imitate Isabel, but wound up waddling like a duck instead. So, when do I get to meet this Izzy? Jimmy asked. I have an idea, Sheila said. We can ride our bikes to the library this morning. I thought you have a job, I said. I thought you have to babysit Fudge. Haven't you heard? Sheila asked. Fudge is invited to Mitzi's. All I have to do is walk him over and I'm free. I hope my mother's not paying you for that. Business between your mother and me is private, Sheila said. Then Jimmy said, I didn't bring a bike. No problem, Sheila told him. We have extras in the garage. Jimmy's here to visit me, I told Sheila, and I'll decide what you're going to do. I went back inside, slamming the door as I did. First, he tells me he can't stand Sheila. Next thing you know, it's like they're best friends. Who needs this? I went up to my room, kicked yesterday's clothes out of the way, and sat on the edge of my bed. In a minute, Jimmy joined me. He sat on the edge of his bed. Sorry, he said. I don't know what got into me. There's plenty of reasons for feeling dizzy besides love. I didn't say anything. You're not mad, are you? Jimmy asked. Why should I be mad? Then you don't mind if we ride into town? Why would I mind? I was trying to help you out since I know you can't stand being around the cootie queen. Yeah, but I feel kind of sorry for her since her friend got chickenpox and all. She told you about Mouse? Yeah, and I know how disappointed you'd be if I'd come down with chickenpox. You had them in 2nd grade. I know, but just suppose. Dad adjusted the seat on one of the extra bikes for Jimmy. Then he handed me a bike helmet. Safety first, he said. The road to town is very busy. We'll be careful, Sheila promised. I took a course in bicycle safety, so I know all the rules. What do you mean? What don't you know? I muttered. I don't know how to turn perfect cartwheels, Sheila said. But with Muriel's help, I'm improving. I jumped on my bike and rode away from the house, leaving Jimmy and Sheila behind. At the end of the dirt road, I turned right and pedaled as fast as I could. I pedaled harder and faster than I had ever before. By the time I got to the big hill, I was really huffing and puffing. My heart was racing, and with the wind blowing in my face, I was gulping air. By then, I was way ahead of Jimmy and Sheila. Who cares about the two of them anyway? Who cares that all of a sudden her stupid face doesn't make him feel sick? I struggled to make it to the top of the hill without slowing down. I was breathing as hard as I could when something flew into my mouth. I coughed, I gagged, I swallowed. I think it was a fly. I think I swallowed a fly. I gagged again and braked so fast I flew off my bike. Luckily for me, I was wearing a helmet and landed in the soft dirt on the side of the road. In a couple of minutes, Jimmy and Sheila pulled up next to me and jumped off their bikes. What happened? Jimmy asked. I swallowed something. I think it was a fly. A fly? He said. I was going really fast, breathing hard. It flew right into my mouth. How do you know it was a fly? Sheila asked. What else could it be? I said. A bee, a moth, a small bird. It wasn't a small bird, I told her. And a bee would have stung me. I'm almost sure it was a fly. Ew, that's gross, Sheila said. I started coughing and gagging again. Jimmy whacked me on the back. What should we do? He asked Sheila. We'll take him to Bicycle Bob, Sheila said. He'll know what to do. I think I'm going to puke, I said. No, you're not, Sheila said. Just get back on your bike and keep your mouth shut. Maybe he should keep it open, Jimmy said, in case the fly wants to get out. It's too late for that, Sheila said. How do you know? I asked. All right, fine, Sheila said. Keep your mouth open if you want. But I didn't want to. I was afraid if I did, something else would fly in. The bike shop was just up the road. When we got there, Sheila called, Bob, we have an emergency. Bicycle Bob came out of his shop carrying a wrench. Hey guys, he said, what's happening? I was riding my bike really fast. I told him I was breathing really hard. A fly flew into his mouth, Sheila said, and he swallowed it, Jimmy added. Hey, Bicycle Bob said, shaking my hand. Welcome to the club. The club? I said. Yeah, the ISAF club. The ISAF club? I repeated. The I Swallowed a Fly club, Bicycle Bob said. I'm a member myself. You swallowed a fly? I said. I'm approaching the half-dozen mark, he said. It's hard to pedal fast and keep your mouth shut at the same time. Does he need x-rays? Jimmy asked. Nah, Bicycle Bob said. He needs ice cream. Ice cream? I said. Yeah, go next door to Ickles and get yourself a vanilla cone. Why vanilla? Sheila asked. It's the best cure for swallowing live insects, Bicycle Bob said. Unless you don't like vanilla, in which case... Vanilla's fine, I said. Good. You need money? No, I've got enough. Then you're all set, he said. Give me your name and address so I can notify you about our meetings. What meetings? The ISAF club meetings. Oh, right. I wrote out my name and address for him. Then the three of us went next door to Ickles. I was glad Libby doesn't work mornings. She was the last person I wanted to see now. Tony Ickle, the owner's son, waited on us. I ordered a vanilla cone. Jimmy ordered a chocolate cone with sprinkles, and Sheila ordered a strawberry. You're Libby's sister, aren't you? Tony said to Sheila. Yes. Great girl, Libby, he said. You can't mean Libby Tubman, I thought. You must mean some other Libby. Nobody in his right mind would call Libby Tubman great. What a hunk, Sheila said as we left the store with our cones. No wonder Libby loves to go to work. We sat in the little park next to Ickles and ate our ice cream. It felt weird to be eating ice cream at 10 o'clock in the morning. When we were done, Jimmy wiped his hands on his jeans and said, Okay, I'm ready for the library. We walked our bikes up the street, but when we got to the library, he said, I'll wait over here. Don't you want to see Izzy? Sheila asked. Don't you want to tell her you swallowed a fly? Somebody has to watch the bikes, I said. Nobody's going to steal our bikes, Sheila said. This isn't New York City. Plenty of bikes get stolen here, I said. Just read the local paper. Peter's such a worrier, Sheila told Jimmy. I don't worry. I think ahead. Too bad you didn't think ahead before you swallowed that fly, Sheila said. The two of them went inside. They're probably going to tell Isabel about the fly, I thought. She'll probably come out to see if I'm okay. She'll remind me about the baseball book I put on hold, and if she looks at me the way she did the other day, I'll get dizzy again. Then Jimmy and Sheila will know the truth. They weren't gone for too long. Izzy's not here, Jimmy said, disappointed. She only works afternoons. Too bad, I said. What's so great about swallowing a fly, Fudge said that night. We were having an outdoor barbecue to celebrate the first warm night of our vacation. One time, I swallowed a turtle. We know, I told him, and I had to go to the hospital. We know, I told him. Everybody was worried, he said, and sad too. Nobody was sad but me, I said, because it was my turtle. I remember that turtle, Jimmy said. You won him at a birthday party. Please, Sheila said. Could we talk about something else? I'm trying to enjoy my supper. Fudge laughed. That's how Turtle got his name, right, Pete? Yeah, I said. I named my dog after my first pet to remind me of what you did to him. Fudge danced around, holding up a French fry as if it were my turtle. Oh, turtles are so tasty, he sang. Boiled, baked, or raw. Cut that out, I yelled. You can't make me, he laughed, daring me to try. Oh, yes, I can. I reached out, grabbed him, then poured my whole cup of juice over his head. He looked surprised. Pete, he cried as the juice dripped down into his face. How could you do that to me? It was easier than I thought, I said. And we'll stop there. Thanks, guys. See you guys tomorrow.